Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In this video lesson, we're going to be working on the book of backgrounds, the mini one, the little one. So I've got my pieces all folded, they're already punched, and I took the two thickest pieces. That's going to be my front and back cover. So this is going to take a little while to get done, but it'll be a lot of fun. So if you don't know what the book of backgrounds is, just you can either go to my website at artplace.ca. I've got a category there for book of backgrounds. I've got the videos in the Facebook, on my Facebook page. I don't know if I have any in the Facebook group, but I've got them also on my YouTube channel. And basically it's nothing but a book of backgrounds, not really formal art that's finished. What the backgrounds do, they inspire you to create a piece of art, and sometimes it's just by adding just a few things to it, and sometimes you fully redo it, but it's more for inspiration. So I always used to do them, well, I did a whole bunch of them for years on full size 8.5 by 11, but we're going to go small this time, and that's it. So I'm going to work on the cover, and basically each piece, like this will be one project, this will be another project, this will be another project. That way you can kind of build it up as a sequence. And for this particular book of backgrounds, it is going to be in sequence. Before I was doing like this one, then, just doing a bunch of pages and trying to assemble them. This time it's going to be actually in sequence, so there'll be a theme. And I was thinking the theme for this one might be nice to be something going back to my roots of when I did the Dark Side of Vintage project. I may have the theme for this one. And speaking about vintage, so the cover is going to be a vintage style. It's going to be just the background, because then when all the backgrounds are done, then I work on creating the actual art. So what I'm going to do is also fit in experiments with all the videos. And the experiment with this one is going to be encapsulating glitter in a resist. So the idea, what I'm going to be going for, is painting the background, and first of all gesso, then paint the background, and then then paint the holes, then mix glitter with a heavy gel medium, stencil that through the stencil. What it is going to be a color, then there'll be the larger holes will be a different color with glitter and a medium to make it look like there's glitter in a dome. I don't know if it'll work, but I'm going to try. Okay, so what I'm going to be using. So I pulled out the supplies that I think will work well with this, and then if I need more, fine. If I don't need them, fine. I'm going to be using the DecoArt line, the DecoArt Traditions White Gesso, to prepare the substrate. And I suggest always using gesso for the book of backgrounds, just to make the papers a lot thicker. Like some of this is 140-pound watercolor paper. I've got some thinner paper in here, so it's always best to try to use gesso to create that extra strength. So the Traditions White Gesso, then the Traditions Heavy Gel Medium Gloss, that's going to make that little dome if it works. Then I'm going to use the DecoArt Glamour Dust. I was thinking, of using the glass glitter, but these are pretty thick, and this stencil isn't thick enough to do that. So I'll have to try and experiment. Maybe I'll do it for the back cover, to do this with a handmade stencil out of cardboard. So I'll try that. Then I've got the DecoArt Traditions Transparent Red Iron Oxide, which they don't make anymore. The Quinacridone Burnt Orange, and then Burnt Umber for the edges. Now, I'm hoping they'll go back to making it. They stopped, even with the fluid acrylics. But you can make something similar to this with Quinacridone Burnt Orange. I'm thinking maybe even a little bit of Alizarin Crimson, and maybe a little bit of Burnt Sienna. I've got some videos on how to make this. There's a bunch of different ways, so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, so let me move that out of the way. And then the stencil I'm going to be using is the Andy Skinner stencil. What's it called? Bubbles. And it's a nice stencil, but it is very thin. So I'm not going to be able to get quite a dome effect on it. And the stencils I was going to use was, I think it's like I think called Dripping Beads or something. It's a big stencil, but they're in a box, and I have to go through like 50 boxes to try to find a lot of my art supplies. So yeah, not happy with that. Alrighty, so let's start off with painting this with transparent red iron oxide. I'm not going to need a lot. So I'm only going to be painting this side, so let's tape it. And remember, when you're using painter's tape, to remove the tape when you're done, because it'll build up a lot of strength and it'll be hard to remove. You may actually tear the paper. All right. Get my BB wipe. Oh, come on. Oh, look at this. A lot of moaning and groaning going on over here. Transparent red iron oxide, which is a nice color. Oh, you know what? Oh, stupid me. Guess what I forgot to do? Gesso. It won't take long for me to get back into my routine. All right, so I'm going to put some gesso on here, and the gesso is to just prep the surface, because what happens when the paint gets in there, it takes forever to dry, especially if I'm going to water it down a little bit to thin it down. Whereas with the gesso, because it's thick and it's meant to be, it's like creating some extra tooth of stuff, it dries a lot faster because it doesn't just absorb into the paper, more sits on top. But now, guess what we have to do? We have to let it dry, so I'm going to grab my heat gun. Now, one thing when you're using the heat gun, you got to be careful not to get the paint too hot, because it'll fuse. So I'm going to put my hand here, and I've got this quite high, and as long as my hand can take the heat, then it'll be fine. Otherwise, I just lift it higher. The better choice would be to use a hair blower on the lowest setting, but the hair blower puts up a lot of air force, and a lot of the times it'll just blow everything away. All right, and that is all tangled up around my chair legs. Okay, so let me just clean that brush. You want to make sure that the gesso is fully dry, because if it's wet, then the transparent red iron oxide, it'll just turn some funny color. Yeah, I love this. Just put a bit more water in there. Now, when I had to add water, because the traditions are, it's a fine art paint, and it's quite thick. If you're using the fluid acrylics, then you wouldn't need to add water. So I'm going to get a little kitchen wipe, and I'm just going to wipe, just rub, and what this is going to do is just remove the excess paint, and it's going to make more of a light color. Again, didn't want to add too much water, because if you add too much water to paint, it's going to break down the strength of the paint. As I'm wiping this down, I'm seeing all the brush strokes from the gesso, which is what I'm looking for. Just try to keep your pressure even. Yeah, that's nice. I'm going to go into here, and I'm just going to paint the edges, because I don't want the edges being white. And I'm going to get some on the back side. I'm not worried about it. Let's just keep going here like this. And you can use a cosmetic sponge. I'm just working the outside. And if you're into the vintage stuff, I'm finding it like a lot of the stuff is nice when it's kind of grungy. And I love that style. which is kind of funny because when I work on creating websites for creatives, most of the stuff is modern, not grungy. So this is my nice outlet to try something different. I'm just going towards the center, keeping it light, creates that little cloudy effect, but still keeps the brush stroke showing. And what we're going to do at the end is we're going to go over with burnt umber, which will create a vignette. So I'm going to dry this again. All right. And a lot of the videos I'm going to be doing now will be in real time, no editing. And this is because I'm getting a lot more positive feedback from the beginners out there. So you guys are learning. I'm getting a lot more feedback from you guys that you want more of the real-time videos without any editing of stuff, because you can see from beginning to end what happens, including any mistakes I make. So your wish is my command. All right, so now what I need to do, I'm going to put that gesso over here. I'm going to put this over here, and that's ready to go. Now I'm going to grab my stencil. So this requires a little bit of planning. So what do I want to capture? Oh, right here, like that. I want to capture that. Just like that, and I want that off the paper. So if I want it like that, I'm going to have to grab a small stencil brush. Oh, come on. Ew. And I'm going to grab the quinacridone burnt orange. Just need a speck of that. And this is more intense. I'm going to pad that on paper towel. And it's a dry brush. Because I have to relay the stencil back on top to do the modeling the heavy gel medium. So I'm just going from the center, going outwards, try to get right to the very edges. Tap the excess off on a paper towel. And you know what would have been handy if you guys could have seen that? Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. So I'm loading the brush, and then I just wipe off the excess like that. And when you're doing your stenciling, oh god, that's an art by itself. I have seen some videos from artists doing stenciling that's just, I am just in awe. Layer upon layer upon layer. And I find that stenciling, getting the paint consistency, that's the hardest part. And I'm really rough on my stencils, so if I took better care of them, I wouldn't have so many problems. Okay, then I can choose, oh, I'm going to keep going to this one here. And you can choose basically whatever color you want to use for these circle dots, depending if you want to make it vibrant or if you want to make it, you know, not a vibrant color, something subtle, more pastel-y. That's up to you. Like that. Okay, I'm going to put that, I'm going to put what? I'm going to, you know what? Let's do it all. But I'm not going to do it with quinacridone burnt orange. I'm going to do it with transparent red iron oxide. So another layer of transparent red iron oxide, but over everything else. And I just have to avoid the circles. just a little hint of color. I don't know why I do that. I always put my paper towel over, so I'm having to cross my arms over. I don't know why I do that. So, show of hands, like I can see you guys. Show of hands, how many of you have, you know, you really want to work with some stencils, but you're stuck on, you know, basically having, you know, because stencils aren't cheap, and basically having a stencil, you know, even if you're just starting out, but because your work eventually, if you use the same stencils over and over again, the artwork looks the same. How many of you suffer from that, trying to figure out how to make your stuff unique when you want to use a stencil, when you don't have a lot? Yeah. Well, it's just on creativity, on, you know, you can take tape and tape parts off. That way you're just using maybe a strip. So I could have just stenciled this part. I could have did masking tape, and I could have just stenciled this part. So that's one thing to do. The other thing to do is you can take, make your own stencils and cut them out. There we go. Oh, I love that. So when I let that dry, then when I mix the medium with the glitter, then I'm just going to go back over here. What I need to do now is clean the stencil while that's drying, and then I have to tape to cover it up, because when I apply the stencil, the modeling pen, when I apply the heavy gel medium with the glitter, I'm going to be scraping it on with a palette knife. Okay, so that's that. Then I have to dry it, otherwise the tape won't stick. And because there's so much crap on my parchment paper, let's do that. There we go. Get my tape. So I need to basically tape all this stuff. That's why I didn't do too many of the big circles. I actually could cut that piece off. If I can get some of that tape. And what else? We're going to block this one. So this is where I typically would stop the video, do the rest off camera, but I'm not going to. I'm going to show it in real time. But if you guys want to skip ahead, be my guest. No problem at all. I will not be offended. I mean, I can't watch videos all the way through. I don't have the bandwidth for that. Not anymore. I love doing these experiments with little things like this, and then as I do them, I think, oh, what if I would have done this? Oh, what if I would have done that? So some of you out there were saying, oh, you should have did this because it was a better idea. Well, you know what? That's fine, but the whole purpose of what I'm doing here, this is for myself, but also to show you, especially the beginners, ways that you can get something done, but for you to explore and experiment yourself. Because you can watch all the videos you want, but you're not going to learn anything unless you actually do it. applying what you've learned is active learning, just sitting back and just watching because you don't feel like doing anything else, that's just wasting time. Life is too short just to sit back and do nothing. Take what you've learned and do something with it. So I'm going to just use those 3, because you know me with 3 6s and 9s. All right, that should be dry by now. Put you over there. Put you over there. And come on. Let me see if I can push that hard enough for the tape to stick to the paper. Yep, that worked. All right, so now let's mix. Let's take some glitter. Okay, I have to make sure that I get this on a clean part. You can't mix any paint in there. So the heavy gel, it's really, really thick. Oh, are you kidding me? Oh, my palette knife. Oh, okay. Well, my palette knife is missing. Well, let's see what I can do with this. What the heck is my palette knife? I can't blame Chaos because she's not with us anymore. Can't blame grandkids because we're in the middle of COVID and haven't seen them since last year. So, oopsie. All right, well, let's see what happens. Okay, I'm going to take this, and I'm hoping that with the using the matte medium, and this is the gold Glamour Dust, and I'm hoping with this, when it dries, that it will still be all sparkly and it's not going to just turn yellow. I really need to find that palette knife. But we're in real time, so I don't want to stop the video. Okay, can I use this paintbrush as a palette knife? Yes, I can. I'm using the end of the paintbrush. This is how I can get it thicker. That's going to take a really long time to dry. So I'll have to do a before and after shot. And that could be the other experiment. How long does it actually take to dry? Using the liquid glass is nice too. It levels out just a little bit. That's the other thing with this is I don't know how it will level out. Level out meaning if it's domed to start, will it flatten out? I don't know. It'll be a nice experiment to try. This should dry completely transparent, but because I put the glitter in there, I don't know. But when it comes to the drying time, I am not going to sit here with the camera on for 3 days. Okay, so I'm going to lift straight up. There we are. So we'll have to see what that's going to look like with drying. Now this, I can't use a heat gun, because when you use a heat gun on this, all you're going to do first of all is you're going to dry the top. And then when the bottom, you're going to dry the top layer, and then as the insides start to dry, it's just going to crack. So same thing with oils. So I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to let it dry naturally. And you can't use a hair dryer because you're just going to flatten that out. So we'll see what happens with this. And I'll just monitor it. I'll watch it every few hours and see where I'm going to let it dry. Will be about 2 feet from a heat vent. So that'll make it dry a little bit faster without running the risk of the outside drying too quickly, and then the inside won't have time to dry properly. already. So I'm also going to pull this off. And then put that aside because I can use it for something else. There we go. Alrighty, so let's wait and see what happens. So I'll see you when that's dry and crossing all the crossable body parts, that it does dry transparent, and you can actually see the darker quinacridone burnt orange underneath. All right, so I'll see you in a bit. All right, so it's dried. It didn't quite do what I wanted it to do. It did dome up a little bit, but I think I just added a little bit too much of the glamour dust. What I was hoping is that the glamour dust would kind of sink to the bottom, and then there would be the clear transparency on top. So the way to get around that is I could put the stencil back on top and then kind of put some more of the gloss gel on it. But I kind of like what this looks like, so instead of modifying this on my own time, I'll just do another one. But the last step to this is now to create kind of a dark edge on it. I'm not going to bother with the palette paper because I don't need a lot of this paint. So I'm just going to grab, whoops, paper towel. And hopefully with the close-up that I've got here, it'll be able to show you. So I'm just going to squeeze a tiny bit of paint on there, just a speck. Just a tiny bit, and then come in to do this. You can use distress ink as well. Problem with distress ink is it's not permanent. This is just to get rid of the white or the painted edges. And then this is this one here is more of a choice on how you want to do that. It's always easier to add more, but it's really hard to take away, which is why I like to start with less than what's needed. Oops, I think the camera was out of focus there. And just rub, little cosmetic sponge. I think I may have to add a little bit more. Oh, maybe not. Yeah, it's gonna have to add a little. I wonder if I can take it from the paper towel. That way I won't have to waste it. Oh, look at that. Okay, let me go this way. Oops. Oops, 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 oops. If I take that and wrap it around there. Can you tell I was a science geek in school? I love experimenting. Absolutely love experimenting. There we go. Like that. So what I could also do is just come in from the outside in, just to create that little haze. Now, I think this is now dried out. Let me see if we have this little edge there. Oh, I don't want to get any on that paper. This one here is a little bit hard. Did you hear my stomach? Oh my goodness. Oh, she's all ripping off. Okay, let me just... It is so early in the morning, I thought I would get the videos done while Joe was out on the walk with Mia, because she's been really barky lately, because, you know, it's... Depending on when you're watching this, it's just a couple of weeks before Christmas, and Amazon is everywhere. All these couriers are everywhere, and she doesn't like couriers. She doesn't like anybody coming to the door. So she barks and barks and barks. I try to do my videos first thing in the morning. You guys are probably still sleeping. It's 5:30. So I'm on my second coffee, decaf. I can't drink caffeine anymore, but yeah, I'm hungry. So you see how you just build this up? I just kind of lightly go around that edge. And as I'm pulling it in, it makes the outside edge darker, but it fades on this side here. If I was to go the other way, touch the sponge to here, it would leave a dark mark. Always the dark part towards the light part. The same way that I teach when I was teaching drawing. There we go. Now we have a nice vignette edge. So I would like to challenge you to experiment more with art instead of focusing on just creating pieces. You never know what happens when you're experimenting. Things that you thought would happen that don't, and things that you thought wouldn't happen that do, because the environment plays a big part of the creation process. And not just that, is that with experimenting, it's all about the outcome. You know, what happens when you do this, or what if you do this, and you learn from that stuff. And, you know, there's nothing better than being a lifelong learner. But as long as you take action on what you're learning, learn something, but do something with it. And if you're trying something that really doesn't make any sense to you, why not teach it to somebody else? I'm going through a masterclass from Jim Quick called the Recall Masterclass. I read his book Limitless, which is, it's all about, he's what's called a brain coach. And my thing with that is, it works great. Like, I'm remembering stuff like crazy, but I like to actually use it to teach my grandkids how to use that technique. I'm remembering stuff that I did. Joe gives me 10 new words a day that I have to remember, and then basically I write them down in my book, and then I recite them to him, and he'll say, okay, and then we have everything in columns. So he goes, okay, what's word number 13 in column 4? And it takes me a couple of seconds, but I eventually do get it. And that actually has helped me with some of this art stuff, because I start remembering things that I did with experiments that didn't work. I think, okay, I better not do that. But so just experiment. What's the worst that can happen? Something goes wrong, but then you've learned something. Boy, that really rough, eh? But look at that. Now we have that little piece. So let me clean this up. Let's put on a less distracting. There we go. So that's cute little cover there. And with this here, I mean, it feels really neat. So I love stuff that I can touch, just instead of just being flat. But now it's a piece that I can now, when it comes to building stuff on it, I can either embellish the circles, or I could add a little word here. It will be like Book of Backgrounds 2020. Well, we're in December, so I'll name it Book Backgrounds 2021. I didn't do anything for 2020 because of the pandemic and my arthritis, but how cute is that? Alrighty, so I'd like to see your version of this. So what to do, if you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link in the description below to head on over to the Facebook group. Post your picture of what you created in there. And if you're watching this from the Facebook group, awesome sauce. And let's see, get some ideas. And a neat challenge would be people who post their versions of this, is that we create our version of what they did. And then you can get a whole bunch of ideas that way. So I hope that you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing your piece. And until next time, stay inspired.